1 in 5 iPhones are now manufactured in India, and we're finally competing with China at a global scale.
But recently, China has made a few quiet moves that could shake India's 4 lakh crore phone industry.
In just a few years, India has dominated smartphone manufacturing. We are the second largest manufacturer in the world, and all this happened in just the last decade. Today, we manufacture 20% of all iPhones in the world. 20% of the world may seem huge. Well, it is actually huge, but all this is happening in a small town in Tamil Nadu called Sri Perumbudur. And people are slowly calling this place India's electronics capital. Foxconn is the company that's making all this growth happen, and
This Taiwanese company is Apple's biggest iPhone contract manufacturer, famous for building whole cities in China just to make Apple products. And for the last few years, it's making iPhones in India too.
now Foxconn is not only building iPhones here, they're also now planning to introduce AirPods and semiconductors too. All growth comes at a price, and this price was paid with attention by another nation, China. China didn't have much of a reaction when India did 3 major reforms.
Policy, infrastructure, and legal. Under policy measures, the most important initiative was the production-linked incentive scheme.
And you can see Foxconn, Pegatron, Tata Electronics, and many other entities all benefiting from it. But clearly, Foxconn made the most of it. iPhones contribute to less than 5% of the total smartphones in the country. But if you look at the numbers, you'll notice out of the $1 billion for the PLI, 75% has gone to contractors which are manufacturing the iPhone. Now, for India to make sure its manufacturing ambitions actually become reality, it needs a basic thing to happen. Manufacturers must manufacture in the country. Now, being a country, you can't really force them to do something like this. So you do it via policy. And one policy was actually making it tough or very expensive to import finished products from abroad. Therefore, the only way for the economics to work is the manufacturer, that is Foxconn, actually set up shop in the country. And then there was support from the Indian government, actually more specifically Indian states. The southern states of India is where all the manufacturing happens. Particularly if you look at Tamil Nadu, you'll notice that the ports are nearby. You have enough skilled labor to actually do this kind of job, more than willing to work at such factories. And the state government actually co-invested by creating dormitories to house all these workers. Foxconn remembers that all these things really matter. Think about it, a single campus can have 3 lakh employees like the one in China. And during COVID, Foxconn had a hard lesson. China had a zero COVID policy at that time, and they basically shut down the entire factory of those 3 lakh people. And because of this, Foxconn was not able to produce iPhones. Of course, COVID is important, but for whatever reason, those targets were not met, which obviously hindered iPhone's sales. Because of this situation and because it was completely out of their control, remember, Foxconn is a Taiwanese company, they knew that this control, because it's out of hand, would affect their top line. But here's the real pressure point. You know, today, Foxconn may be a Taiwanese company, but 70% of its sales come because of China.
Somewhere, that flipped the power equation. It's now Foxconn that is hugely dependent on China for its supply chains.
The story started 20 years ago when China put pressure and said, we want you to create industrial clusters in China. And that's exactly what Foxconn did. So not only did it make supply chains over there that were very strong, skilled, and they understand how this works, but also the labor over there is very skilled and understand how it works. So the Chinese need to show us Indians how to actually make the iPhones, because all the technical know-how is over there. Less than 1% of Foxconn in India is Chinese, but those 1%, they actually own all the really important technical and managerial roles. And China knows this, so it uses it as a pressure point. Recently, they took back a few hundred Chinese employees who were really important for the manufacturing back to China. And that obviously hindered performance of the manufacturing phones in India. Now think about it, Foxconn imports all the machines from Chinese companies. So those are Chinese machines, the spare parts, everything Chinese companies hold. The service is also done by them because the manufacturing of those machines is cheap, you have to rely on China to actually supply those machines. Second problem, those machines run on Chinese code. So even the manuals, the rule book, and even they say the emergency button is written in Mandarin. Now apparently Foxconn has asked the suppliers to actually change it to English, but those machines haven't come here yet. My point is simple. Just because we have production happening in India doesn't mean the entire benefit goes to India. China seems to also benefit, and in many cases seems to hold some really pressure points for us. Now there are two possibilities over here, that importing the machines, getting the English versions and all these issues are just a speed bump and things will be fine. Or the alternative, they won't be able to import the machines and the Chinese executives and workers will not have access to the Indian plants for whatever reason. Now if the second one plays out, they'll have to figure out a solution. Now Foxconn has enough money to survive a next storm, but what if it has to import machines from a different manufacturer, which is more expensive? Should be alright, right? Until you look at this. Foxconn's margins on the iPhone is just 3%. 3%, which means that it has to run like clockwork. The entire business, from start to end, times have to be optimized, and you have to squeeze every amount of energy to take the manufacturing out at pristine quality at the lowest time output possible, because the margins are just 3%. So processes become where you actually make the money. And if there's any input cost that goes up, it could make the entire business unviable. And there's a ball and chain connection here, which means that if Foxconn becomes weak, all the other supplying companies nearby, which are actually helping in that production, and the workers also face a threat. So it's not just one company, it's that entire cluster. Trade must be smooth, so there's no need to actually do it yourself. So you import the things that your country cannot. However, if the trade is disrupted, the importing country simply finds an alternative. And this is what's going to happen with India as well. It's going to find an alternative on all the things we depend on China, from skilled labor to even manufacturing of certain specific machines. India has the technical know-how and the companies which can actually figure it out. And the gap left by the Chinese workers leaving the factory is already trying to be filled by Foxconn. They're trying to hire from South Korea, Vietnam, and all other countries to replace that workforce. There is a much more detailed version of this entire story. You should check out the Daily Brief article. Say something nice in the comments because it was written pretty well.